Hey everyone, welcome to Meeple Bits. Thanks for joining me today. Viscounts of the West Kingdom, designed by Shem Phillips, published by Garfield Games, for 1 to 4 players, with a playtime of 60 to 90 minutes. This is the third of the games in the West Kingdom series, so join me as we go through a setup and how-to for the game Viscounts of the West Kingdom. So let's take a quick look at the components that are going to come out during the course of play. In each player color, you have a Viscount, Guild Hall, Trading Post, Workshop, Workers, and a set of starter cards. Additionally, we have Corruption and Virtue markers, Inkwells, Stone, Gold, Silver. Player cards, two-sided. Hero Townsfolk card, as indicated by the brown background behind their name. Townsfolk cards, as indicated by the black or gray background behind their name. Castle Leader card. Manuscript tiles. Cleric bonus cards. Prosperity and Prosperity deeds, or deeds, which are two-sided. And then Poverty card, and then the debt cards, two-sided. And lastly, we have the castle, the player boards, and then the map boards. Let's take a closer look at the player cards that you're going to select at the beginning of the game. Here's the sort of player reference card. This will tell us from top to bottom that if two Viscounts share the same location, the opposing Viscount may reorder the cards on their player board. The tiers of the castle indicated here at the end of the game will score you 1, 2, and 3 victory points for being on tier 1, 2, or 3. If your worker gets bumped out of the first tier, the player gains 2 silver. If you are bumped out of the second tier, the player will move their virtue and collect a resource of their choosing, either gold or stone, and then you cannot be bumped out of the third tier. This will indicate the types of manuscripts, if you collect one of each color, how many victory points additionally you would score. And then down here is what will happen when you reset. On the flip side, when setting up, this will indicate which zone of the map tiles you'll place your Viscount to start the game, what resources you receive, silver, and then any prosperity or debt cards, and where on the virtue and corruption track you would move your token. Here's the player cards and what their icons are going to mean. In the upper left of each card are their cost, in addition to the movement value for the Viscounts. Icons are the resources that they will be available to add to your collection. In the upper right-hand corner of the Townsfolk card, the normal ones, is the immediate effect when you either hire or dismiss them. And in the lower section, what will happen when either an immediate effect, a drop-off effect, or an ongoing effect occurs. The lightning bolt indicates an immediate effect, so here, this would get you one of each resource. When this player drops off of your player board during play, you can either take a debt and flip a prosperity, or take a prosperity and flip a debt. Here, each time you pay a silver and use the trading icon, you will move your prosperity or your virtue 1 on the track. To begin setup, take the 5 main player boards, decide how many players are playing, and then make sure that you are shuffling them with the right player count. So in this setup, let's set it up for either 2 or 3 players. So we want to flip all these 4s over to their other side. Once complete, you're going to put the castle right in the middle. Next, you're going to take the neutral Townsfolk cards, again as indicated with the black or gray background behind their names, and then you're going to put them in each of the 5 locations around the board. So you're going to take these cards and divide them up into roughly 5 equal piles. Next, you want to separate the manuscript tiles, the gray backgrounds, from the black backgrounds. Create 5 draw piles with the gray tiles first face down. Then you're going to put the black tiles face down on top of them. What this is going to do is, when putting them face up on their spaces around the board, the gray tile is always going to be the first one selected. So create roughly 5 equal piles of manuscripts. So when I dealt out the Townsfolk cards, sorry guys, these actually go face up on their spaces around the board. So sorry about that little correction, but let's go ahead and fix that now. Next, create a resource draw area, placing the silver, inkwells, gold, stone, the castle leader card, and then the cleric bonus cards, all in an area for all players to reach. So once you've made it to this point, we're not quite finished, but this is what you should have: the main play area, the castle, townsfolk cards in each of their spots, manuscripts, and resource area. Next, let's set up the poverty and prosperity. So you want to take the poverty and prosperity cards and take notice of the player counts and the amount of debt and deeds that you're going to use in each of the games. Take note because they are not identical. So in my 3-player game, I'm going to draw out 16 deed cards and 15 debt cards. And then we're going to create piles right next to the board here. The remaining cards would actually go underneath the debt and prosperity cards, but for purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to keep them off to the side. Take note that they can still be gained once the immediate piles have been depleted. Now it's time to set up the player board. Each player select the color of their choosing and then grab all pieces for that color, including the starter cards for that same color. Then we're going to set up the main player mat. Up top, you're going to put each of the trading posts, guilds, halls, and workshops, including a virtue marker and a corruption marker, right here on the board. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward, show you guys what that looks like. And all set. Then, once the player has their cards, you're going to create a draw pile next to your player mat. So go ahead and take the cards, give them a good shuffle, and then create a draw area right next to it. So there's a lot happening on these player boards. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at everything that's happening out here, and we'll cover this in more detail. But to give you a preface, this area here kind of goes through the turn order track, starting with card management, moving your Viscount, primary actions, recruiting cards, resolving any collision, and then drawing cards back up. So those are going to be the 6 phases of a turn. Additionally, as your virtue and your corruption tracks go up and down, they're eventually going to collide, so then you're going to resolve the iconography here on this track. Up top are going to be the victory points whenever you build any of these constructions, and then here are going to be the spaces where you draft cards into your sort of play area. At any time, there's going to be 3. In that first turn, you'll notice that these 2 spots here are going to give you some immediate icons, but once they get covered up, they're essentially going to stay covered by some card throughout the rest of the game. And we'll cover these in more detail as we go through the turn order and the different phases. Next, we're going to deal out Hero Townsfolk's card and starting player cards. You're going to deal these out equal to the number of players plus 1. So you're going to deal them out in pairs. So randomly select in a 3-player game 4 of each of these cards. In a 4-player game, it would be 5. And then pair them up like so. At this point, you're going to want to go ahead and decide who the first player is going to be. That player will then receive the first player token, and it'll stay with them throughout the game. So once you've got the pairs set up in reverse turn order, meaning the last player will pick a combination to start with. They're going to select their starting setup along with the starting hero Townsfolk in combination. So example, let's say the last player chose this one, the next player this one, and then the first player this one. So as the first player, I'll go ahead and take this into my hand and then set up myself accordingly. So as first player, here's the hero Townsfolk that I've selected. I'm going to shuffle him into my starting hand of cards. And then this is my starting setup. From top to bottom, I'm going to place my Viscount in the 10th position on the player board. So looking around, there are these red numbers here, and this is number 10. So I'll place my Viscount there. Next, it says that I'll receive 1 stone, 1 gold, and 1 ink from the supply. In addition, I'm going to receive 10 coins, 1 deed, 2 debts, and then I'm going to need to move my corruption up 2 spaces on the track. So over here, 1 and 2. And then I'll take my resources into my hand as well. Each player is going to go ahead and do this. So the other players, let's say player 2 and player 3, they are starting on spots number 4 and spots number 7, respectively. Before going through the phases of the turn, let's take a quick look at the corruption and virtue track, as this is going to sort of dictate the flow of the game, which is the collection of debt and deed cards, and that will trigger the endgame scenario. We'll dive into this a little bit further when we get to it on the turn order, but how it'll work is when you need to move your corruption, you would move the black token to the right. When you need to move your virtue, you would move the white token to the left. In the event that both tokens then overlap with one another, like so, they will then always move together from that point. In cases where you need to resolve both corruption and virtue, so let's say on this turn I needed to collect 1 corruption and 2 virtue, you will always resolve corruption first, followed then by virtue. So in this example, if my markers were here to begin with, I would first resolve corruption by 1, then virtue by 2. But because they collided, they would move together on the track. So I'll go ahead and reset my position. Now you'll notice I'm starting off in the 2nd position over, as was indicated by my starting hand. So to begin play, all players start by drawing 3 cards into their hand. Once this is ready, you're now ready to begin the phases of your turn. So phase 1 of my turn, well, here is my starting hand that I just drew. Phase 1 of your turn, you're going to begin by shifting all your cards to the right. Here on the first turn, we don't have any cards yet on our play track, so nothing would fall off. But for example, if this card were in the far right position, it would then slide off into the discard pile, thus triggering its effect here, which is to hire a Townsfolk and move 1 to the left on the virtue track. Then you're going to hire one of the cards or play one of the cards from your hand. So let's say, for example, I played this journeyman. You would play him into the far left position. The red area indicates that, as a reminder, that if you play a card that has a purple skull icon on it, this acts as a wild card for use of icons during your turn. So if you played a purple skull, you would actually gain 1 for every skull on the track. So if this was the first one played, then it would be 1. But let's say there were already 1 down, and then I played this one in addition, I would move 2 on the corruption track. And then that's your card management phase. So that's your phase 1. Phase 2, or the movement phase, this is where you're going to move the Viscount from the main play board, or around the main play area. You're going to move your Viscount up to the number of spaces as the card that you've just played indicates. So here, I can play one, or I can move my Viscount 1 or 2 spaces on the track. If I'd like to move more, I simply pay 1 silver per additional space that I'd like to move. Keep in mind that if you end your movement phase sharing a space with another Viscount, the other Viscount, as indicated here, may shuffle their track here. So if I move 2 spaces and I share a location with another Viscount on this first turn, since I'm also the first player, it doesn't really matter because there's nothing for them to be able to shift around. But on future turns, they would be able to reorder their track here. So when moving your Viscount, you must follow the rules of movement, which are to follow the arrows around the track, which indicate the directions at which you can move. Most of the time, you're never going to be able to move backwards on the track, only ever forward. So if I'm moving my 2 spaces, I can either go 1, 2, or I can go 1, 2, thus sharing a space with this Viscount here. And for my first turn, since I did play a Townsfolk with 2 trade icons, I do think I want to end my turn here. So for the movement phase, I'm going to go ahead and share it with this Viscount. Now they will be able to reorder their track if they had any cards. Phase 3 is your primary action phase. On your turn, you may only do one of these primary actions, but in addition, you may also discard or dismiss the face-up card that you're sharing a spot on the main play board with. So for me, it would have been this card here. I can choose to dismiss it if it shares the icon with the main action that I'm taking. And if I dismiss them, I would pay its cost and be able to use the icon in the upper right corner. Since the face-up card here is a wild, I can dismiss this for any purpose because a skull is a wild, so any action I take, I can use this Townsfolk. I would pay 2 silver to dismiss him, but I'd also go to the right on the corruption track 1 marker in doing so. In addition, I will be able to have that additional wild for the course of this turn and this turn only. So it's 1 additional icon to use for this turn. So right now, the icons that I'm going to be able to use for the primary actions are 2 trade icons, a cleric icon, a builder icon, and a worker icon, in addition to 2 more trade icons. So that gives me 4 trade icons and then 1 at each of the others. The 4 primary actions that you can take are trade. The trade is only available around the outside of the track. So using the trade action, your Viscount must be on the outside track, which mine is currently. For the build action, same thing. To construct a building, I'm going to take any one of these buildings here, paying their cost as indicated up here. So this would take 3 build icons. This one would take 7 build icons, and this one would take 5 build icons. To construct a building, I would be on the outside area of the track, place my building in a space near my Viscount, collect its reward, and then move into the next phase. For placing workers, this action happens on the inside track. You must be near the castle to place your workers inside the castle, and you would place that worker inside the nearest tier that you are currently at. And lastly, transcribe a manuscript. Same thing. Your Viscount must be on the inside track in order to use this action, and you would only be able to take from the manuscript pile nearest to your Viscount. So on my turn, I've moved my Viscount the 2 spaces to end up here. And now I have the choice of doing the either trade action or construct a building action. For me, I think I'm going to do trade, since I have at least 4 trade icons to be able to convert 2 into 1 stone. So I think I'm going to use 4 of my icons and then collect 2 stone from the main supply. Thus concluding my primary action, getting some additional resources. I could have also constructed a building if I had enough icons to do so, and going here I would have been able to delete a card from my hand, or delete is what I'll say it, but basically I would be able to permanently remove a card from my draw deck, sort of strengthening it by removing anything that I don't want, or hiring someone for free. Had I have used this main card as I indicated, or as I said, I would pay 2 silver. I would then have an additional wild, but for this turn, I don't really need it, so I wouldn't have done it. And then that's that phase. But for example, if I ended my turn instead on this spot, because I moved over 1, 2, but if I would have gone 1, 2, and then down here, I could have then hired workers to put into the castle at a cost of 1 worker would have cost me 1 fleur-de-lis icon, which I only had 1. 2 workers would have cost me 3, so on and so forth. Or I could I could transcribe this manuscript. So if I had 3 cleric icons, I could purchase this manuscript, giving me the immediate effect of collecting 4 silver. But these actions down here, I didn't have enough icons for. So, oh, not yellow. I'm actually red. I moved yellow, but you guys get it. So here, I'm going to stay up here for my turn. Let's see what getting workers into the castle looks like, because there are some special rules at play. So, example, if I were to have gone into this location, and I wanted to put 3 workers into the castle, rules of the castle do indicate that, 1, I can only put workers into the castle on the tier that I'm nearest. Then, once all workers have been placed, I must now resolve any time that there are 3 or more of a single color worker. No 3 workers of the same color may be on the same location on the outside tier or the second tier. So here, I would then follow the rules as indicated here on the arrows and split these guys up, and then moving 1 guy forward, like so. The outside track gets you nothing, but now that I've just moved him up, I would get the reward of being able to flip either a debt or a deed. Additionally, on subsequent turns, let's say, for example, I were to have placed a worker here and here. So let's say I put, let's actually put 3 workers all into one spot again. Same rules apply. I must then break up these workers like so, moving him forward. Then I would be able to take 1 gold or shift workers again by 1 space. So this reward, let's say I wanted to do that, I would be able to shift one of my workers left or right on the outside tier, and the outside tier only. So let's say I wanted to put this guy back over here. And then maybe on a later turn, again, let's say I placed yet 2 more workers into this location. Same rules apply. You move 1 to each side and then move 1 up. Then I would be able to do this again. So let's say I wanted to move this outside worker over here. That would then chain reaction this to trigger yet 1 more time. Workers move out, workers move in. And then eventually, when there's 3 workers in the second tier, 1 will be able to move into the center. Once 1 player reaches the center, they get a resource of their choosing, not a silver, and then they would be able to take whoever has the most workers in the center takes the castle leader card. Next is phase 4. So here, you're going to recruit the topmost card that's available next to your Viscount. So as we recall, I did not dismiss that top Viscount or that top Townsfolk, this player or this guy. So I would be able to now hire him at a cost of 2 silver, and I would be able to put him, well, starting off into my discard pile so that he can later be shuffled in. So if I were to hire this guy at a cost of 2 silver, let's go ahead and do that. So 2 silver to the bank. Then I would hire him going into my discard, and then I would move my corruption up 1. And that's the recruit phase. Next, it's time to resolve any collision, as indicated here. Right now, I don't have any collision to resolve, so I would just move into the next phase. However, if, for example, both of these corruption and virtue markers moved in such a way that they both ended here by the time I reached this phase of my turn, I would then need to resolve this collision. Keep in mind that underneath each of these buildings are additional bonuses that would be used during each of those phases. In this phase, if a player did not have any thief icons, then they would be able to move left on the virtue track. So example, I don't have any here, so I would actually move myself one to the left. But for this example, I'll go ahead and stay right here. Then, if any of your currently displayed Townsfolk cards on your board have a bonus down here that indicates it triggers during a collision event, you would then resolve that as well. Then, as indicated here, the current player that's resolving the collision gets the bonus up top. So in this case, I would receive 2 silver, 1 deed, and 1 debt. All other players would receive the bottom row. So all players here now may reshuffle or reorganize their current player track. If I did end over here, then any player that has 1 or more thief in this area would move up the corruption track. If over here, all players that had no thieves would be able to take a deed. And then collision has been resolved, and what would happen from there is you would break apart the 2 markers, moving them back to the far left positions. But for me, I'll go back to my original spot for the turn. And the last phase is to draw up to your hand limit. My hand limit is 3, so I'm only going to draw up 1 card. If I had this building built, for example, that would increase my hand limit by 1. Additionally, the player that holds the current Castle King card will also get a +1 to their hand limit. And that hand limit is always going to be your hand limit as long as those are displayed or available. If you ever lose the castle card and need to give it to another player, for example, you don't have to discard down, but you wouldn't be able to draw up. Now, during that draw card phase here, if your deck were completely empty and you're unable to draw up the number of cards necessary, so let's just go ahead and discard our entire hand over here. So if that ever happens, then you would follow the rules down here. So, example, when you need to reshuffle your cards, go ahead and do so. Taking the deck, giving it a good shuffle, and then of course drawing up your hand, like so. If your player track has any skull icons, you move up 1 on the corruption. Conversely, if you have no skull icons on your track, you would move left on the virtue track. Keep in mind that, for example, let's say that were the case here. Let's say, for example, when I'm reshuffling and I'm resolving this, it is possible for my markers to collide. But I've already resolved the collision event, so I would not resolve it in this case because I'm on this phase of the player turn. So keep that in mind. So that brings us to triggering the end of the game. The end of the game is triggered when either the poverty or prosperity decks above their poverty and prosperity cards has been revealed. So example, if all the debts have been distributed, revealing the poverty card, you would flip it, indicating that this is now an end game scoring event. Keep in mind though that there would be cards still underneath that card available to take. These are considered unlimited. It is also possible for both of these decks to reveal the scoring card, at which point it would be a divided kingdom, and both cards would be available in endgame scoring. Once one of these cards has been revealed, it triggers the end game. You would finish the current round, so all players would have the same number of turns and play 1 additional round. So example, I as first player, if I triggered the event, players 2 and 3 would get 1 additional turn, and then we would play 1 final round of all players taking 1 final turn. In the case where the third player triggers the endgame event, then we would play 1 final round only and end game scoring. So once the game is ended, all the players are going to add up their score for the following spots. 1, constructed buildings. So example, if you've completed all 3 of these buildings, you would receive 9 victory points for these constructed buildings. But if you hadn't constructed any others, that's all you would receive. Let's say you constructed 3 of these and 1 of these. That would give you 9 and 6 in the constructed buildings category. Next, you're going to add up any workers in the castle. As indicated here, any workers left in the castle on the outside tier are worth 1 victory point per worker. The second tier is 2 per worker, and the inside tier is 3 per worker. Next, add up any sets of ribbons. So any 4 sets of ribbons would receive 1, 4, 9, and 16 victory points. So example, if I had completed 2 manuscripts, only having 2 ribbons, that would get me 4 victory points. Keeping in mind that same colored ribbons do not count towards that, and they would be uniquely different. So if I had, for example, 2 sets of this exact one, that would actually get me 4 plus 4. So that would give me 8 victory points for having 2 sets of 2. Next, the player that has the castle leader card would gain 5 victory points. And any players that have received the cleric bonuses for having 3 of the same ribbons would receive 3 victory points. Next, go through your debts and deeds. Any unpaid debts are minus 2 victory points. Any unconverted deeds are 1 victory point. And any converted deeds are 3 victory points, or rather acquired and approved. And lastly, the poverty or prosperity cards, or both, whichever of these have been revealed, you will score up top. So in this case, the player who has flipped the most deeds would receive 12 victory points, followed then by 8 and 4 for second and third place. In the case of a tie, the 2 players would add up first and second place and share them. So in this case, it would be 12 and 8, which is 20. So each player would receive 10 victory points. And that's it. That's endgame scoring. So before we wrap this up, I'm going to take a couple of turns just to kind of give you guys a general idea, again, of that course of play. So stay tuned. All right, so let's take a turn or two. Let me set myself back up to how I was when I went through the first turn. So now the other players would take their turns. So, let's just pretend that, I don't know, yellow ended up over here and blue ended up over this way. Okay, so now for my next turn, I've got my 3 cards that I'm able to choose from right here. So for this turn, I've already got still some icons out here, and this is about to get covered up. So, I think I want to go all in again on some trade icons. So let's go ahead and do that. To start my turn, I'm going to first slide everything over. So sliding this to the right, nothing falls off yet because nothing's in the far right position. Now, these icons are about to be permanently covered, so that's why I knew that I wasn't going to have any of these icons for my next turn. So, sliding these guys over. Then I'm going to play the Financier. Now, this has an immediate effect for me. So, 1, I get another trade icon. It gives me an immediate effect of discarding 1 card gets me 2 silver. So, looking at my hand here, I don't think that I'm going to really use this cleric right away, this abbot. So, I'm going to discard him and then get 2 silver from the bank. Okay, so I didn't play any wilds or any skulls into my hand here, so that's going to take care of phase 1. Now, phase 2, we're going to take our movements. So let me go ahead and hard edit over. Okay, so I get to move up to 3 spaces. So I do want to stay on the track where I can use my trade icons because I have 5 showing. And then I may want to try to get more by possibly using, there we go, this card here, which will get me at least 1 more. So that'll be 6 total, which isn't terrible. Now, I only have to move up to 3. So I could actually just move 1 and end my turn here and collect 3 inkwells. That's not terrible, but the order goes down here. Let's see. So 1, 2, 3. You can't see it, but there's 1-to-1 on the silver. Let me bring this down here. There we go. So I could end up over here. So either 1, I just want to end my turn right here. And then, oh no, sorry, I do have to move the full spaces. Yeah, sorry, you can't move less than the number played. That's right. Okay, so this will do one. So let's go ahead and actually then do that. So if I've played a 3, so let's do 1, 2, and then 3, and end up here. So I actually might want to go ahead and pay the 1 silver. Here we go. So I'm going to pay 1 silver to the bank to get me to move 1 additional space. So let me go ahead and slide over here. There we go. So that'll get me back to sort of what I was trying to accomplish all the way over there, which is 2 trade icons for 1 inkwell. There we go. So 2 trade icons for 1 inkwell. And right now I've got a total of 5 icons, but I do want to go ahead and play this guy because I'm going to do a trade action. So I do want to go ahead and dismiss him, paying 1 additional silver for his cost, which temporarily gets me these icons. And additionally, I get to reshuffle my rows if I wanted to. And I think I might actually do that. So I'm dismissing this person, which gets me 6 icons. I'm going to use all 6 here, which gets me a total of 3 inkwells. And these inkwells are going to come in handy because I can convert the inkwells into the cleric icons. All right, so that was my primary action. I do want to go ahead and actually reorder, so I kind of want to slide both these guys all the way down here so that this person can fall off next turn. So I'll go ahead and do that, actually. So then this person, they were dismissed, so they would be returned to the box completely out of the game. I can now hire the card that was left in the space next to my player, which was this one. He would cost 1 silver and get me 3 trade icons. Yeah, I think I'll definitely buy him. So doing a lot of trade actions here. So we'll go ahead and bring him into the hand like so. And then next phase is collision. I don't have any collision to do. And then last phase is to draw back up. I was left with 1 card in my hand, so I would actually draw up 2 cards. So the final 2 cards that I have here in my hand. So next turn, when it comes back around to me, I would now need to reshuffle. So if I had any purple icons on my row, then I would actually then need to do some additional specials. Or if I don't, then I'll be able to gain 1 virtue. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this one. I'm going to go ahead and tear down the table. I hope you have found this helpful, and stay tuned while I bring you guys my afterthoughts.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that setup and how-to for the game Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Let's go ahead and jump right into my afterthoughts. I got to get this one out of the way, I guess, early on here, so take it how you will. Of the 3 games of the West Kingdom series, Architects, Paladins, and here Viscounts, Viscounts is probably my least favorite. Not because it's bad, just, I don't know, there was just, for me, too many over complexities of this one that kind of detracted from the fun factor for me. So with that, I guess, let's dive into why you should probably add this to your collection. Well, if you're like me and you love, Shem as a designer and you wanted to complete the collection of the West Kingdom series, go ahead and add it. Definitely. It's still fun to play. Don't get me wrong. The strategy involved in selecting the right people at the right time as they then slide off of your tableau and the worker track is really deep. And I do enjoy that part of it. And so if you enjoy a deep strategy game that is ever changing, this is definitely going to be one to add to your collection. A reason why you may not want to add it to your collection is for some reasons why I've, I guess kind of prefaced, is that it kind of stands to be a little too complex. So I guess my issue was, while I understand it, there was, I don't know, getting into the castle is tricky, and then moving everybody around is good in terms of its strategy, but just again a little too complex in my opinion. Additionally, the debt and the favors, again, how you have to kind of balance that in the majority of my playthroughs, there almost wasn't a time where during the last dash we depleted both decks down to their rewards. So I don't know if there's something to be changed about that, but overall, because of those added complexities and what they were trying to go for, maybe don't add it to your collection. So with that said, some of the things that I really did enjoy about this game, as I mentioned, were the strategies involved in selecting the people at the right time. Great. Something that I didn't enjoy, though, was trying to build up your deck and then getting rid of the necessary cards to try to strengthen your deck. It seemed too difficult to do because when it came down to making a decision of getting a card to be removed from the deck versus something else, that something else almost every time seemed to be a stronger move. And it was, I guess, that mechanic, that inability to more easily get rid of cards from your deck that really kind of just pulled the game back for me. Otherwise, though, really fun and a great experience. But if I had to order them in terms of which ones I would play, first, second, or third, truly in the order they were released, I think I probably had the most fun with Architects, followed very closely by Paladins, and then Viscounts did kind of fall down that tier list for me just a little bit. So with that, guys, I'll go ahead and wrap this one up because it's a very fun game and it's got deep strategy for what it is. For me, this is not one that I'm going to bring to the table ahead of the others. So if you've played this one and you've got some feedback, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Really appreciate your thoughts behind this one. As always, guys, I do appreciate the support, so if you've enjoyed the content, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And as always, until next time, thanks so much for watching.